Good evening. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. My name is Andy Upton. I'm one of the leaders at Knighton Free Church, and we're really grateful to have you here with us. We are looking tonight at a country called Burkina Faso, and it's great to have Mark Gibson with us. I've got Sara Goddard here as well, and I'm hoping Chris Trafford is going to be able to join us shortly. Mark, why don't you just put your video on and say hi to us, and let's see who you got with you. The special guest for tonight, who's that?
My beautiful daughter, Amelia.
Hey, Amelia, nice to see you. Now, if you haven't met Amelia, she's one of our students at Knighton, who's obviously gone home at the moment. Mark, we're going to get to you in a minute, I promise, don't worry. But Amelia, tell us a little bit, first of all, what is it like being a student at the moment? You've obviously gone home, but what's it like for you? Tell us a bit about that.
Well, right now I don't have an awful lot to do, maybe like a lot of people, but my course at uni was quite practical, and obviously can't go in, and basically none of the work can be done online. So not really sure what next year looks like, and just trying to find things to do and different projects to do to keep myself kind of sane and keep my mind occupied, but a bit hard to keep going without any sort of purpose. So yeah, I'm making do.
It's hard, isn't it? It's very hard at the moment. I mean, it is that kind of uncertainty, is it? I think none of us kind of know what's going to happen, but for a student, is it going to run next year? What's going on?
Yeah.
How do you keep yourself occupied? What do you do every day?
Well, I like to be practical, so I kind of have to find physical things to do, whether that is being out in the garden or cleaning the car today, or I've been trying to make books, so making paper and learning things off YouTube, trying to learn different recipes. I don't know, things to kind of keep yourself occupied, and going for long walks with the dog is quite helpful. Getting outside is a big thing for me. Yeah, that's sort of what my life it seems to be right now.
Yeah. Well, look, thanks for joining us. Really grateful tonight. Mark, you work for SIM. You and the family have spent time in Burkina, so you know it well. Can you just help us? I know it sounds stupid, but there'll be some people watching who are going, Burkina where? Give us a feel for where. I mean, we know it's kind of North Africa-ish, but help us to understand where it is, would you?
Well, you were close. It's West Africa. Do you want to kind of put the quick PowerPoint up to show you?
Yeah.
Okay. Make sure I've got the right one. Right.
It's a big reveal. We're all excited.
Yeah, sorry, I hadn't lined it up, but it's all lined up. It's all lined up now. So there we go. So can you see that?
Yeah.
Right. So it's that wasn't the one I wanted. Technology.
It's lucky you've got Amelia.
So yeah, Burkina Faso, completely landlocked in the Sahel, sits just underneath the Sahara Desert, and pretty warm. It's home to about 72 different language groups. So it's a very, very interesting place to be.
So what sort of temperature would it be at the moment?
At the moment, it'd be around about 40-45 degrees C.
Wow. Okay. Fairly warm.
So yeah, quite warm.
And give us a feel for what the country's like. If we went to visit there, what are the kind of the sights and sounds that would hit us as we arrived?
Cows and donkeys.
Yeah, I mean, you'd arrive in the capital, and the traffic is pretty much chaos. It does have tarmac roads, not all are tarmacked. I often likened it to driving in the capital, like driving a boat through a shoal of fish, because you have more mopeds than you do cars, and any sudden moves you knock somebody off. When you arrive in the capital, it is like coming to a different planet. If you've never been to West Africa before, but when you actually move out of the capital, it takes you another level. So we used to live in the north of Burkina, which really was a kind of a medium-sized Sahelian town. We had a number of people, visitors, explaining it had few redeeming features. But
what about the people? What are they like?
Incredibly warm, incredibly friendly. But even that has started to change with in the present climate. We've always found them very accepting, but certainly over the last few years, the country has changed beyond recognition. It's very diverse. As I said, there's over 72 different language groups, but you have one language group that dominates, or is predominant, which makes up 60% of the population.
And tell us about your time there. So how many years were you there for? What were you doing over there?
Well, we were there for 15 years. So and we went over there to work with Fulani people. So the Fulani people, the largest nomadic people group in the world, and they span right across West Africa. So initially, for the first 9-10 years, we were doing church planting in the north of the country. It's like less to do with church planting, actually more church development. Still engaged in evangelism. There was already a kind of a church that had been established a number of years ago, but very, very small.
And Amelia, what was it like for you growing up there? I mean, you spent a number of years there. How did you find it?
Yes, I spent the same 15 years there, and what was it like? Very different to here. Like, I guess different in every way is kind of imaginable. It's hot. I don't know. When we first started growing up, we were in a village called Jibo, and it's actually it feels quite similar to how lockdown is right now. So we actually had a little compound, and we're mostly inside that compound. We're allowed to go outside and see the local kids and play, and sometimes we go to the capital and meet other kind of expat kids. But most of our time, like, we didn't know what summer holidays were for many years until like a lot later on, when we realized they were a thing, because we'd come back to the UK for like a furlough. But yeah, it was normal. It was familiar. Kind of, you learn to compartmentalize England and Africa. It's two different lives. Yeah.
Now let me bring Sara Goddard in at this point. Amelia, you know Sara, I think. Mark, have you met Sara?
No, I haven't.
There we go. Mark, Sara, Mark.
Mark.
Oh, and look, we've got Chris Trafford as well. How wonderful. That's glorious. So look, they're going to just join us in this conversation. Sara has a little bit of experience with West Africa as well. Sara, tell us about that. Where have you been then?
So I went to Cameroon for 6 months, just after I finished university, actually, so a little bit older than Amelia. And then also to Senegal for basically a summer holiday, sort of
Yes.
rec. So yeah.
Great. And Chris Trafford, who's just about got himself sorted out. Chris, you've actually been to Burkina. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I went after university in my gap year. I went with SIM and stayed with a missionary family out there in a tiny little village called...
Oh, we've lost him.
Piella.
Yeah.
Fill the gaps in for him.
We just lost you slightly there, Chris, but we'll bring him back in a minute. So look, Sara and I will just ask you a few questions, if we may. But I mean, so far so unremarkable. Burkina Faso, West African nation. quite poor Fulani people seeking to share the good news of Jesus. Tell us first of all about the church, would you, Mark? What's the church like? Yeah, how big is it? How widespread?
Well, the main denomination there is the Assemblies of God, and that's quite a large denomination, predominantly down the south and the west of the country. The church that SIM work with, the Église Évangélique, that's more in the east of the country, and again, it's quite well established. The Fulani Church, on the other hand, is still in its infant stage. So you have missionaries working with the Fulanis for many years, and the progress is very slow. They come from, all the believers come from a Muslim background in the Fulani Church. Well, it has to stand on its own 2 feet now, because there are no missionaries there able to work with them. I work with the church remotely on projects. I think I mentioned to you, Andy, that before leaving, I spent the last 5 years helping with theological education, training Fulani pastors further in the south. But it's still very small. When you think of a Fulani church, you might have maybe 3 or 4 believers and their families, sometimes even smaller. So it's very diverse. Yeah, one of the challenges and one of the reasons why we were over there is because often the more established churches don't necessarily kind of see the need to reach across cultures. There's certainly, to the Fulani people, they're often perceived by the church as unreachable, and obviously they're not. I mean, I think the church is more aware now of the need to kind of reach across the tribal boundaries, and they are doing, but there's still strong prejudice, and there's a lot of fear with the local church, with the growing Muslim population as well. So I mean, does that describe a little bit to you?
Yeah. So what changed? What's happened in that nation? Why, in fact, are we talking about it tonight?
Well, let me put the kind of slide back up again and see if I can make it work and behave. Okay, let's see where it goes. Things started changing in Burkina in really about 2009, 2010, but 2016 is where things changed dramatically. There was an attack in the capital by jihadists, possibly from Mali, some I think from Burkina, and a lot of people were killed downtown. A missionary kind of friend of ours was caught up in this restaurant that you see at the top. At the same time, what really kind of marks it out for us was some good friends of ours. He was a missionary doctor in the north of Burkina, where we worked and we lived, and he was kidnapped along with his wife. His wife was released, amazingly enough, 3 weeks later, and we can only consider that a real answer to prayer and a miracle. Ken is still at large, and there really isn't any news or fresh news on him. He's possibly in Mali, but again, there's not a lot really we can say there. I think he's about 85 years old.
Oh my goodness!
Which kind of makes it all the more distressing. So we continue to pray for his family. We continue to pray for his release, and we try to encourage anybody that we share with to pray for the release of Ken. I mean, his testimony in the town was quite phenomenal. When throughout the country, actually, I think when you have a doctor that's established there and he was respected, he did a marvelous job, and after a while you take this person for granted, and I think very much the town started taking him for granted because he'd been there for so long. He'd delivered many of them in childbirth, but when he went, the town they just came out in there, about thousands, and not only in the town, but throughout the country as well, saying, give us our doctor back. So remember to pray for Ken.
Thank you. We'll do that a little bit later on. Sarah, Chris, I don't know whether you want to ask Mark or Amelia anything at this point.
Yeah, and I was wondering, Mark, so you said a few minutes ago that the Fulani, small, very small churches, still very slow increase in believers. I mean, I remember back in, goodness knows, 1994, sometime like that, when I was in Cameroon, and we had Fulanis there, and that was again, very slow, very few believers. Why do you think it's so hard to reach this people group?
I think one of the reasons is that they're a very proud people, because they're pastoralists, and when you're a pastoralist, you very much live in isolation, and so you don't necessarily connect with other people groups, and so you get this reputation for being rather aloof, and that becomes. You have your culture, and within that you have something that is called Pulaku, which makes you what a Fulani is, and you hold to that tenaciously. It's all your identity, and tied into that is the language, is the religion of Islam, and just the way they're herding. I mean, if you were to kind of if you were to go to a Fulani and his wife was sick, and his cow was sick at the same time, you can guarantee who'd get to go to the vets, and it wouldn't be his wife. That's quite a sweeping statement, but it's not far off the mark, actually. I've seen that happen. So when you're trying to introduce something like new, like the gospel, it meets a resistance, partly because of their traditional beliefs. But this tenacity of holding on to the traditions, and one of the kind of challenges has been in Burkina, that when education came through Burkina, the Fulanis didn't go to school because they were they didn't send their kids to school. They were more keen to actually hold on to their traditions, and they sent their slave class to the school, and they got ahead. But everything's changed now. I mean, a lot of the schools in Burkina are closed down. Bit of a long-winded answer, but hopefully
Chris, come in. We're having a few problems with your sound just a moment ago, but you've been there, you know it. What do you want to ask, Mark?
I was there about 15 years ago and actually visited Mark and Amelia and family back then. I understand it's quite a different place now. What's kind of changed, and given those changes, kind of how many of the people that would have been out there when I was there 15 years ago are still there? Presumably not so many.
As in the missionaries?
Yeah.
None. And that's for varying reasons as well. I mean, a number of missionaries would have moved on, before them, but you stayed with Streger family, and they went home because they could no longer operate where they were. But the activity of it, the jihadists is just continuing to grow and to spread. You wouldn't recognize the country now. In the north where we used to live, I mean, it's.
You couldn't go there since a long time.
Yeah, I haven't been able to go there for a long time. The last time I went there was 2012. It's just too dangerous. It's too dangerous for everybody, and I can't say too much on the internet, obviously, but it's incredibly sad to see what's happened. the place where you lived when you were there over the weekend, it was attacked. A lot of people killed. A lot of people just fleeing for their lives. And now you have, again, I can't say too much live on the internet, but there's a real fear that there's going to be serious intertribal conflict, and that is, hard to really kind of imagine from a country that used to be so stable. And the word Burkina Faso means land of the upright men. Things are changing, have changed. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it's so sad to hear of so many people leaving their homes. It'd be very tough to leave our homes in England with bank accounts and everything, but where, in Burkina, where people are just getting up and leaving with a bag of grain on their back, and that's it. That's all they're leaving with. It's hard to hear and understand what we can do to help. Is there any things that you can think of that ways that we can help? What can we be praying for? What can we do actively to help?
I mean, I think the obvious thing is that peace would return to the country. Everyone wants that to happen. But it's a little bit like the coronavirus, isn't it? God is sovereign, and God, for some reason that beyond our understanding, permits these things to happen, working out His purposes. So pray that His name would be glorified. Pray that the church would shine. I remember the last time I was in Burkina, I was speaking to a Fulani pastor. The church in the east of the country had just been attacked, and I think the pastor was killed, and a number in the congregation were killed. And he said to me, "This is going to be a real refining time when Christ purifies His church, because you're not going to stick around if you just come along to church because of tradition." It's basically where the rubber hits the road. And I think the amazing thing, with the gospel, I mean, one of the things I teach at the Bible school there is Revelation, and what a phenomenal book to teach to a church under that sort of pressure. It kind of puts to bed some of a lot of the controversies that surround it, when you're actually having to communicate to a people the original intent of the book of Revelation. And it's a privilege to preach, and we have a treasure in heaven that cannot be removed. And so for the church, for the believers, that's the hope that they have, and really be praying that the church recaptures that vision of the hope that is steadfast, is certain. I started preaching. I'll stop.
We can pray, and we will do that shortly. What else can we do?
I mean, sometimes the situation just seems unsurmountable. I mean, we've had a number of churches giving to one of the projects that we have. We can't help everybody, because there's thousands of displaced peoples. But we try to help those who are, I guess, we're aware of. We have a friend nearer to the north. He's dealing with an awful lot of refugees that have been fleeing, and we're able to give him some funding each month. It kind of scratches the surface, but it still demonstrates the love of Christ, and we're able to facilitate that. For displaced pastors. I mean, because I work with the Fulani. It's Fulani pastors that we are looking to help, and so we try to help them when they are displaced, because an increasing number have had to flee for their lives. And the stories I could tell you would make your kind of hair stand up on the back of your neck. There's been some very narrow escapes. There are some that haven't escaped. So we try to do what we can. The Bible school, there's a lot of uncertainty there, and we're trying to actually support the students. through that as well. So whenever I kind of speak to them, the Fulani church leaders, I'm in weekly contact with them. I was speaking to one this morning. They're incredibly grateful for the support that we can give them, and they always ask, please just get people to pray. I think in the context of the likes of Burkina Faso, people understand and appreciate the power of prayer, and we have no idea how God is answering prayer. We just have to trust him that he is.
Thank you. Well, we'll help people to understand how to give if they'd like to do that. We'll make that clear later on, perhaps in some emails around. Amelia, how old were you when you left Burkina?
About 15.
Do you have any contacts with anyone in the country still? I mean, obviously, I guess you were connected in with a lot of the expats, but
yeah, like now and again, the pastor often calls me or sends me, like, asks me how I'm doing, how Sara family's doing, and his son as well, Isiaku. I'll be in contact with him. Some of the pastors from the Bible school now and again, so Amelia will call me. In terms of the local kids, not so much, because we're quite young. We have friends up in Jibo, and a lot of them, I don't know, they try and speak to you in they text French, which is very hard to understand. But most people I'm in contact from the Bible school or expats. Yeah.
thank you. Chris, Sara, anything else you want to ask?
I think it just brings home to me how tragic the situation is, and just hearing you speak from a really personal viewpoint. We're sitting at home in lockdown, and yet, and thinking that how long is it going to last? And these people out there are thinking, how long is this going to last? Not just coronavirus, which for them is probably a secondary issue, but just the whole weight of the fear that they're probably going through, I'm sure. And I've not got a question now. I just wanted to say that because it feels so real, really, talking to you and just thinking about that, those people, those tribes, those like you say about Revelation, and every tribe and every person, every nation will be there, and just wanting to sort of feel that solidarity with those brothers and sisters in Burkina Faso who will be there is fantastically real to me. Thank you.
It's very hard, isn't it, when we're dealing with our own crisis in the UK, not to let it eclipse everything else, and it takes extra emotional energy to kind of be hearing about another tragedy in a part of the world that you've never been in, but as one part of the body hurts. We should all feel that, shouldn't we? Yeah,
I think we would need to have that feeling of it, almost. I was talking to somebody this morning about it being almost feeling like a hopeless situation to make us feel we want to act about it. And it's not a hopeless situation because they have God, but at the same time, it's very deep and, very, very painful to hear about it. So.
Mark, thank you. Amelia, thank you for joining us. You're obviously going to stay, and we're going to hang up in a minute on YouTube. Really appreciate you just helping us to understand what it's like for brothers and sisters in Christ in West Africa right now. Sara, would you pray just as we close this first part? Thank you.
Yeah. Father, Lord God, we just thank you so much for what we've heard now and giving us ideas of how we can pray for your people in Burkina Faso, the Burkinabes, and in the situation that they're in. I just pray that you would help us to take this to our hearts, Lord, and to know that as we join with others in praying for our brothers and sisters in different parts of the world, and particularly in Burkina, that you are hearing our prayers. We don't know how you are going to act, what is going to come of this situation. But we can trust in you, Lord, that you are with these people and that you are working in this situation. And we don't understand how, but we trust you, Lord. Pray for Mark and for his contacts, and Amelia and the contacts that they have in Burkina. We pray for safety and for peace. And we ask that you would bless these people and uphold them, Lord, with your strong and faithful arms. In Jesus' name we pray these things. Amen.
Amen. Well, if everybody on Zoom could stay where they are, I'm going to hang up on YouTube. Thanks for joining us if you've been watching us there. We'd love you to come and drop in on this Zoom group so you can talk to Mark, pray with him and Amelia. And I think you got the details for that in the WhatsApp group. If you haven't, just text somebody, we'll get them to you. But thanks again for joining us.